So good afternoon, everyone. I think we'll get started, and because we have Eva and Sarah who have lots of things to share with you. Before we get started on this session on attachment in a time of adaptation, we want to tell you that we're trying this webinar platform, and this is why Martin is also with us. We're trying it, so it's kind of new. It's like our second time using it. So we're trying things to share more information with you. It might not be perfect, so we're trying to adapt to that webinar platform as well. So we apologize. Your comments are more than welcome. You can write in the chat box or so in the QR section. Your questions, comments are what feed us from giving you more next time. So please don't be shy if you have any questions. I wrote my email address. My name is Valérie Fortin. I'm working at the FNEC and I'm a special ed counselor. And it's quite a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. So my email address is written up in the chat box, which is vfortin at cepnufnec.com. So I will introduce you to my colleague, Sarah Clairé, and then she will introduce our présentatrice.
Quick. Sarah Claire Tijnagashин. I'm Language and Culture Counselor for First Nation Education Council, and working with Valérie into this process for 3 years, try to learn more about attachment. And this is Eva Agustin. Well, Eva will present herself.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Good. So my name is Yvette Agustin. I'm a school psychologist and I've worked in the field for many years. I'm originally from Montreal, but I spent 25 years outside of Montreal working in schools all across Canada. I spent 13 years in Saskatchewan and worked with First Nations communities, both Métis non-status and what was at that time called anyway, on the reserves. So it was a First Nations Council that I worked with there as well. So I have a little idea of some of the challenges that you're facing in your communities. I also worked in Yukon in the far north, and so again with some very, very tiny communities. My experience is working with children who have learning and behavior problems. And for the last 20 years, I've been working with the English School Boards of Quebec. So I work with all of the English school boards and I'm the provincial consultant in the area of behavior disorders. So my challenge is to help people to understand what children need from us. And of course, in this particular time, we're in a very unusual situation because our children are not in our schools. Our children are at home. They're either at home with you, the parents, and very welcome to those parents who are with us today, or they're at home with you, school staff, as you are trying to do your jobs online and also manage your own children at home. And so when Valérie called me, we've worked together for quite a bit. We decided to put together a series of 4 presentations just to help you to understand a little bit of what's going on, perhaps in the lives of your children, the children in your own homes, or the children that you're communicating with, via online platforms. The approach that I use is a developmental approach. It's based on the work of Dr. Gordon Neufeld, a psychologist from British Columbia. And he's pulled together many different theories of looking at human behavior, and he's joined them together in a very unique way. I've had the privilege of working with him for the last 17 years, and my job is to basically take that material and make it accessible and understandable to people that are working in the schools. So the topic today is about the importance of attachment and the importance of adaptation. So what can we as the adults in children's lives do to help them to cope with the particular situation that we're finding ourselves in? And then how can we help make the process of adaptation, take on that process of adaptation and I'll explain a little bit about what that is. I'm hoping that I can do this in about a little over half an hour, and also we'll be asking Sarah to help just make sure that what I'm saying works in the context of the communities that you work in. So we'll give her a little chance to kind of share her thoughts and her reactions to some of the material as I go through it. So I'm going to share my screen. There we go. And just get my PowerPoint working.
So while Eva, you're sharing your screen, I just want to say that we're doing a YouTube live at the meantime. So you can watch the previous session we did last week, and you will be able to watch this one over again.
Great. Thanks, Val. So we yes, and we did the first one was on play, and then we're going to do a session as well on understanding frustration, and also a session on understanding alarm. So we're looking today at attachment in a time of adaptation. Of course, adaptation means that we need to figure out what to do with something that is brand new, something that we've never dealt with before, and something that can also cause us a bit of frustration and concern. So I'm going to start with our role as adults in a time of uncertainty, and then what we can do to help our children move into the process of adaptation. Of course, this isn't only going to be for our children, this is also for ourselves as adults. So when the world feels unsafe, what do our children need? Well, they need the adults in their lives more than ever before. I'm going to be quoting from one of my colleagues, Dr. Deborah McNamara, and actually we will share that interview with you. And she said, one of the things she said, which really struck me, she said, the most important message our kids need to hear right now is not about what COVID-19 is, but about who their adults are, the people who will care for them and carry them through this storm. And of course, that's us. That's us, their parents, that's us, their teachers, the people that they relate to in their communities. And of course, what's really difficult for us right now is we can't actually, some of us can't be with the children we know lean on us, but we find our way to communicate with them. What our children need to know is that we will take care of them and get them through this difficult time. And it's really not information that's going to make children feel secure. It is about the relationships, and safety is about human attachment. And this is what we can provide. And what I want to do today is just basically share with you a little bit about how we're wired as human beings, and therefore why some of the things that I'm going to recommend to you to do that are very actually quite simple will make a difference to children. So the first thing we're going to look at is what is attachment and what does it enable adults to do? And my little figure here, these little stick figures basically represent what it is that needs to happen. First of all, there needs to be a hierarchy, and it's not a hierarchy in the sense that children are little and they're not worth very much, but it's more a hierarchy in the sense that we, the adults, take our place as people who have knowledge, who have experience, who've been through difficult times, who've come out the other side of difficult times, even though sometimes it was a big struggle. And what we want is we want our children who have less experience than we do, less maturation than we do, be able to lean on us. And that's what this little icon represents. It represents a child coming to us, leaning on us, and allowing us to take charge of them, to take care of them, and to let them know that we are there for them. They can lean on us. And what children need in terms of their growth and development is they need to have someone that they can lean on, because it creates this attachment, creates a sense of home. We provide comfort and rest and a place of retreat. And sometimes we're asking ourselves right now, the whole world is all over the place. One of our participants mentioned that she's not spending much time on Facebook or social media, and I totally understand. At some point, we need to turn the televisions off, turn our telephones off, and just not listen to all what's going on. And our children, the same thing. But luckily, they have the adults in their life that they can look to, who basically can say, "It's all right. I'm here. You can lean on me." and we can become their compass point. When they turn to us, we can make sense of the world that's out there for them and guide them and direct them. And ultimately, of course, when everything is back to whatever is going to be our new normal, we can continue to transmit the things that are important in our culture, in our communities to them, because these are all things that over time we've learned can make a difference in helping children to grow up to be healthy people. What's really interesting is that there are instincts that are deeply wired in us. We have alpha instincts, which are providing instincts, and these basically are actually deeply wired inside of our brain, and allow us to very naturally be able to take care of somebody that needs caring for. I know that we often will talk about, did somebody not did they not have good models for learning parenting skills? And of course, good models are very helpful to us. But the desire and the ability to take care of someone who needs us is wired into us, and so it's very natural for us to want to orient, to protect and defend, to guide, to look out for, to possess, and to lead. These are part of who we are as human beings. And kind of matching that, and this is why we have this little circle on the top with the two arrows, is that alpha instincts and dependent instincts actually come together. And so it's very natural for someone who doesn't know what to do to, to fall into their seeking instincts and to get their bearings, to seek assistance, to look up to belong, to follow, and to look for guidance. And these are, again, very natural, and this should work. It doesn't always work. Sometimes this gets disrupted, but especially in times like this when children are really quite destabilized, they are looking for someone that can help them. And of course, what we want to make sure is that the people that they look to are people that are experienced and have more knowledge and have the life experience to be able to help them. And so it's very important that we, the adults, take that role on and do it in a very conscious way, because sometimes we do it very naturally and every day, we have our routines. We get up in the morning, we get our everybody going for their day, we get back in the evening, we do certain things, and our role as the adult is a very natural, easy role. We know what it is that we do. Children know what they can lean on us for, but this has been disrupted right now, and so we need to think about this in a bit more of a conscious way. It's very interesting because actually, as human beings, these dependent instinct and alpha instincts come together in all of our relationships. What's different with an adult to an adult relationship is that it switches back and forth. That's why I get those little guys, flipping back and forth. Sometimes we're the dependent, sometimes we're the alpha. I use the example with my own husband. I am the money person in the family, and he is the person who he does many things, but he loves to organize travel. And so when we're going on a trip, I lean on him. I let him make the decisions. He tells me, "Oh yeah, we're going to go to see the Grand Canyon." Oh, he says, "This is so interesting and that's so interesting." I said, "Great," because he reads all the guidebooks. He knows so much more than I do. I'm very happy to depend on him, even though, and Valerie can tell you this, I'm not generally a very dependent person, but in travel I am. And in the case of finances, he leans on me. And this is what a good relationship is about, is when you need me, you lean on me. When I need you, I can lean on you, and it goes back and forth. But of course, with children should be the ones who are seeking guidance from us as the adults. And these dependent instincts, when they ask us, what should I do? What should we be doing right now? Is it going to be okay? These should be activating our alpha instincts, our desire to take care of them. And there's three parts to being an alpha. One part is called taking the leader role. And this is where we actually step up and take charge. Sometimes we can feel a little uncomfortable with that role, because maybe in the past we've had the experience with somebody who's wanted to take charge of us and tell us what to do, and they don't ask us what's going on, and they kind of push us around, and we don't like that. But on the other hand, when we don't know what to do, somebody has to step into that leadership role. You can't have equality in this kind of a situation, because if two people come together and one person doesn't take that leadership role, the other person will. And of course, what we're seeing right now in terms of here in Canada and here in Quebec is who stepped up to take those leadership roles. Well, we have both Monsieur Legault and Monsieur Trudeau that have stepped up, and they have basically said, we have information, we have knowledge, we have all of our people that are here that are going to help us to figure out what we are going to do. But what's very important, and again, I think if we look at what's happened at the provincial level and at the national level, is they didn't just become dictators that told us this is the way it's going to be. They also assumed responsibility. And this is this is what happens when we are this caring alpha. We are willing to be in charge. We are willing to be the ones who kind of step up and say, look to me, I'll help you. But we also assume responsibility. So we feel guilty when things don't work. And again, if we look at what's happened provincially here, they got feedback about what wasn't working. Mr. Trudeau and his cabinet have tried many different ways of making sure all of the people who aren't getting enough money are getting money. Doesn't mean they got it right. It just means that they listened to and felt badly about what wasn't working and then tried to do it, because ultimately the leadership role has to be modulated by responsibility and by caring, right? And so we call this a caring alpha, a benevolent alpha. And this is what we want. But the alpha still is the one in charge, still the one who makes the decisions, and of course sometimes is not terribly popular. And so these alpha instincts, when we want to take care of somebody, it actually should activate dependent instincts. So wanting to be taken care of. And so this is the role that we need to take. And again, most of what I'm going to recommend to you is very caring alpha. Once in a while, it's about being a leader who makes an unpopular decision. And I know one of the unpopular decisions, my son, who has become a stepfather to two teenage girls, and it's only been a year that he's been a stepfather, so he's not very good at he's the kind of person who really likes to please everybody, but he's finding out that he and the mother of these girls once in a while have to say things that the girls don't like. And the other day when I was on the telephone with them, he was saying, oh, one of the girls was really unhappy with me. I said, well, why? Well, because we've had to tell her yet again she can't go and visit her friends. And he felt so mean, but I said, but you're taking care of her. You're doing what's right for her. Of course, you're not doing it because you're being mean. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And of course, she's not going to like you. But when you are a caring alpha, you aren't always liked, but you're doing it for all the right reasons. So so I'm just going to stop here and just have Sarah, do you want to just respond a little bit to the whole idea of alpha and a caring alpha and what this all means?
Yes, the first time I heard the word caring alpha, I was, oh, okay, what's that? And it's not until I really understand what it means, and I was working with Valerie, and I understand that, well, it was a bit like an elder was, and not a lot of adults used to be in the past and in traditional ways of teaching. They were really present. They were really well, we all heard it takes a community to raise a child. So I questioned myself what it really means. Well, it means the way the elder used to be in the past. So like I said, they were very present and caring for children. And they were learning by experience too. So they were getting the borders, getting like the framework, and then in that, the children were allowed to play and experiment. But they were all very, very showing a lot of confidence. Like they were owning this leader role. And we can always think about, and probably a lot of you can think about one time where you go to an elder and ask a question. Well, they have the right answer. There's a lot of people from KZ. There's an elder I absolutely love there, Joan Tonasco, and she told me some stuff sometimes that it just really touched me really deep. She said she's scary the voice of the ancestors. So it's all the knowledge, it's all the skills. And sometimes she feels guided too. So it's not just her knowledge, it's all that she receives and all the love and the good caring that she carries and give up and give to her families and children that she's teaching.
Yeah.
So they're really reassuring the elders. Um, you can always go for an advice. And I recall one time I was really like done with my pregnancy, and I could stand one day, and I called my cookum and I said, okay, what can I do? And then she just gave me the right answer to reassure me and comfort me. And sometimes it could be just a look, right? Okay, keep
Yeah.
going, you're in the right path and you're gonna make it.
Yeah.
So they provide this kind of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we all need. We all need to believe that there's someone we can turn to, and someone who's going to have experience that that we don't yet have. And this is exactly what's very critical right now, is for our children to have that. And so I'm going to just share with you just some ideas of how you can do that. And some of them are going to seem extremely simplistic. But right now, I think simple is better. None of us has the bandwidth to do complicated things. But I think if we as the adults can do some of these things, a little something every day, it will help our children feel calm. Just like Sarah, when she went to her kokum and the kokum said, it's going to be okay. Sarah was able to calm down. And of course, when she calmed down, she gave her baby the conditions that the baby needed, which was a calm mother. And so these are the things that I'm hoping I can share with you. So first of all, even when you don't know what to do, you have to act confident. Keep your concerns and all of us have them. Try not to say them in front of your child any more than you can. If you do need to call somebody, go outside the house. I'm here in Montreal, and I see a lot of people sitting in their cars. Well, if you need to have a meltdown because you really don't know what else to do, go into your car, call your friend, have your meltdown privately so your children don't hear it. It's important for your children to believe that you're coping with all of this, even if you can't, and that's fine. It's perfectly fine not to cope, but just find some way of doing it so that it's not necessarily in front of your children. Communicate often, and this is for you, the teachers as well, because again, one of the things that we're finding is where you're being asked now to communicate with your students. So communicate often, short, not long, but provide the reassurance. I'm here for you. It's going to be okay. We're going to take care of your academics. Don't worry, when you come back in September, we'll make sure that you're not left behind. Everything is going to be fine. This will get better. Solutions are being found. We're all working together. And again, if you listen to the messages that both Monsieur Legault and Monsieur Trudeau are giving to us, it's exactly the same message. And even though on a rational level, we might know that they too are struggling, but on an emotional level, we feel reassured there's somebody who's thinking, not only them as individuals, but a team of people who are trying very hard to take care of us. We feel better when we know that we can trust them. We need to be able to talk about the emotions that are happening. It is scary and it's normal to be worried. It is frustrating not to be able to do the things that we do. That's normal. It's okay to feel upset and angry. Don't be afraid of talking about these emotions, and I'll talk in a moment about them when I talk a little bit about adaptation. Little things that you can do in your home. Create a few anchor points in the day. Which is my way of saying have a routine and a schedule. I know some of you have gone on Facebook and you see the beautiful color-coded schedule every 15 minutes. No, I'm not talking about that at all. And trust me, I'm an organized person and I couldn't do that. But what do children need? They need anchor points in their day. They need at least one meal that they can count on at a certain time. Obviously, school online is an anchor point if you're able to do that. They might need a time in the day, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Now it's time for games, it's time for playing, or it's time to go outdoors together. My husband and I go for walks between usually about 5 o'clock, and there's many families that are now out with their children. If that's all you can do is just have that half an hour to go for a walk, that's fine. Um, and also possibly doing some kind of outdoor things. In the home, one of the biggest signs that we as human beings are respond to is food. the preparation. Now, probably, maybe you have some teenagers, you've got some kids 11, 12 years old, they've been making their own food for years. They're perfectly capable of doing it. But right now, and again, I don't mean to make you their servant of anybody. I don't want you to make you a slave, but you need to remember this is one of those things that we need to consciously think about is what sign can I give to my children? What sign can we give to our children that we are taking care of them? And one of them is making food. So just even if you aren't like your kids get up early in the morning, you don't get up early in the morning, put the cereal boxes out the night before. A couple of spoons, a couple of bowls. The children wake up, they look out into the kitchen, and what do they see? Mommy, Daddy, we're thinking about me. They're feeding me. This is the time to be making comfort food. If you love mac and cheese, make lots of mac and cheese. Prepare some treats. Just pop some popcorn in the microwave if you happen to have a stash of popcorn at home. The act of making food makes our children feel cared for. We also, maybe this is the time to just give somebody a blanket, just give them a stuffed animal, even if they haven't used their stuffed animal for years, put that stuffed animal out, provide these comfort items, and then create opportunities for play, for board games, for family games, for music, for dancing. It's the creating the opportunity that again says, I'm taking care of you. And of course, for some of you, if you're lucky enough to live and be able to go out into the bush and go out into the area, this might be a time for you to bring your children out and be the leaders in that outside time. I'm going to just continue to move on here because I know we're getting a little short for time. Unless, Sarah, if there was something quick that you wanted to just maybe share here before I go on, or Valerie, just a little something.
I can see we have question. Just a reminder to Galbert that we're gonna answer them maybe a little bit at the end. So
Yes.
we keep them on mind.
I just want to say that sometimes as parents, we know that the situation, there's nothing we can do about it, but we just have to reassure our children. And I think nobody has the answer right now about COVID-19. Nobody does. But when we think as parents or as teacher or whatever, as adults, we sometimes had things that we didn't know, like for our kids, but we were just telling them, you know what, this is your first day of school. Is it gonna go well? Nobody know that. Even as parents, we don't know that. But you know what? I'm with you. I'm going with you the first day. I'm picking you up after your day. And you know what? I'm with you. This is the only message, because we don't know, like, as if a school year will go well. Nobody knows that. But it's pretty much the same thing. So just to be there and say, I'm with you. I'll be there for you. Thank you, Eva.
Yeah, thanks, Sal. Yeah, and I think that is the most important. We can't guarantee anything for our children. You know, we can't guarantee how life is going to turn out for them. But what we can let them know is we will be there for you. We'll figure this out together. There are so many people that can help us. We're going to find the help. If I can't do it, I'm going to find the help. And I'm hoping that many of you are feeling that your schools, the people from your schools, are reaching out to you to help you if you are struggling with your children. Now, the other thing that we can do as the adults in our home is we can work on helping children to become adaptive and resilient. And actually, the most important part of that is to help our children to find their sadness and their tears. And I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to share with you how this all works and how you can do this. But I know that I've been seeing, again, on social media, parents who are very upset because their children are crying. And my basic thing is, oh my goodness, if your child is crying, this is a sign that your child is moving forward. Because what we have to understand is that adaptation, it's an emotional process whereby we are changed by that which we cannot change. And oh my goodness, we are as a society having to change because we can't change COVID-19. We can't change COVID-19. It's here. It's here now. But what can we do? And we've already changed. I mean, between March the 12th and March to the 13th, all of society turned around and started doing something we never thought we could do, which is to stay home. So we can change. We can change. Things can move on. But first, we have to pass through an emotional process. The emotional process then actually transforms us. It changes our brain. Norman Doidge wrote a book called The Brain That Changes Itself. Our brains can change. That transformation can happen, but it doesn't happen because we force it to. It actually happens because of a process that we go through. And this process is a journey of sadness and tears. And more people are starting to realize that sadness and tears are not to be avoided. They are part of the human condition, and they are an integral part of what allows us to get through the most difficult things in our lives. Um, and so we have to be careful, because coping is not adaptation. And of course, there are times we have to cope. We have to manage. We have to power through a situation. When we first were told, you have to stay home, the schools are closed, all of us found our coping mechanisms. Okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. We da 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 da. But that's not, coping is not adaptation. Coping is just powering through. And any of you that have powered through a lot, okay, you at some point get very exhausted. And what we need to do is we need to go to the next level, which is this adaptation level, which is an emotional journey. And when we go through that emotional journey, now we can actually be changed by it. And it's a very different feeling. It's exhausting as we're going through it, but when you come out the other side, it actually feels less um, energy draining. Dr. Neufeld makes this look like it's sort of a descent, something that goes down and then bounces up, a rebound. And so what happens is when we have our tears, and tears, by the way, we have to kind of let them flow. They're a letdown. And when we actually have our tears, it feels like we're going down, down, down into a deep, dark hole. And it's a very, very scary feeling. And the thing about it is, of course, we can't do this alone. And this is going to be your role as parents, is to be there with your children, but not to stop them from going down, because it isn't until we go down and feel this world that is just so changing, and we don't know what it is, that actually our brain can start building up and coming to the bounce back. And I was just came across some research that is actually being done, and there's many researchers that are looking at the importance of this crying and sadness and going into this dark, sad place. Um, and they've basically studied people who cry and people who don't cry, and they find that the people who cry are have more mental health, have less mental health problems. They become more adaptable. They also physiologically do better. Tears are incredibly important, and it's very, very hard to watch someone go into that deep, dark place. I know I had to do it with my daughter, who had a big breakup. But because I understood that she needed to go down before she could come up, I realized my job was to sit with her in her sadness, to actually sit with her in her sadness, allow her to go through the grieving process. And what are we grieving right now? Our children are grieving not being able to go to school. They're grieving not being able to see their teachers. They're grieving not to be able to see their friends. We are grieving a life that has changed as well. We need our tears as well, but I'm just going to help you to help your children find their tears. And what we find is when we go through that, we become more resourceful. I mean, all of you have had to do that. And again, it's not always about crying tears. It's just about feeling your sadness. I remember some of you probably went, oh, the schools are really not going to open. And there was kind of a sadness that you felt. And then you said, okay, well, away we go, and we're going to find what to do. And it moves us to being resilience. And what is resilience? It's not the confidence that I can make the world work. It's the confidence that we are able to handle things, even if when it isn't what we thought would happen. And it's the growing confidence in one's abilities to cope with challenging situations. And again, many of us as adults are able to say to our children, it's okay not to be the most popular child in your class. It's okay. It's going to get better. You're going to realize you're going to go to your 10th high school anniversary, and you're going to realize the popular kids weren't the ones who coped the best. Those of, the other kids who weren't so popular actually did it better in life. So it's this resilience where we figure out how we can make it through. But what adaptation requires is a soft heart and a place to cry. And by a soft heart, it means that we have to be able to tolerate vulnerability. And for some of us, that's very hard to do. And actually, Dr. McNamara, in one of her talks about this, she was basically saying that even she herself, and I know for myself as well, I've been having a hard time finding my tears, because to find my tears means I have to actually think about the big changes that are happening that are really scary, even for someone my age. Um, and so we have to find moments, and what you're going to find is these moments of crying are going to happen very suddenly and very in an odd kind of a way. I know for myself, and I'm going to tell you this story because it really surprised me, but for myself, I didn't find my tears until I fell off my chair. I've got one of these rolly chairs, right? And I went to lean to get something, and boom, it went out from under me. Crash, I fell down. It made a huge noise. My husband, who also happens to be in the house, luckily he was close by, he came rushing into the room. I'm sitting kind of in shock. I didn't actually get hurt, although at my age, you kind of have to be a little careful of those things, but I didn't actually get hurt. He helped me up. And as soon as he touched me, and because I had this shock and my shell had gone down, he picked me up and I started bursting into tears. I fell into his arms. Poor guy didn't quite know what was happening. He gave me a big hug because now he knows when I cry, all he has to do is hug me. And now I had that safe someone to cry with. And I wasn't crying about falling off my chair. I was crying about all of the things that I don't know what's going to happen. I just needed a good time to cry. So I'm just warning you, sometimes your children will start crying when you least expect it. Sometimes you will start crying when you least expect it, but you need those tears. If in a child, tears are the best indicator of an emotional system that is functioning well. Sadly, when we communicate to our children that there's something wrong with them for being sad, we stop both their tears and their ability to become resilient. And I know sometimes we don't want our boys to cry. Sometimes we don't even want our girls to cry outside of the home. We're trying to make them tough. But in this particular case, they need to feel that sadness. And one of the best gifts we can give to our children is to value their sadness and their tears and to make room for them to flow. Now, how can we do this? Well, first thing is we need to come alongside their emotions. And sometimes their emotions are going to be pretty raw. They're going to be frustrated. And so our response, and by the way, the next talk that we're going to talk more about frustration, but frustration is about something not working. And sometimes we need to just come, oh, that didn't work for you. That wasn't what you had in mind. Or that was really scary. We are not sure what's going to happen. Or you really want to see your friends because you're scared if you don't see them, they won't like you anymore. So we need to come alongside whichever emotion we think they're experiencing. By the way, these are the 3 go-to emotions. It didn't work for you. It's scary. You want it. You got those 3 down, you're pretty well going to be going to the emotional place where your children are at right now. You match that emotion, and then you subtly move towards the sadness. A child might slam something. This juice is stupid. It's not the kind of juice I wanted. Nothing to do with the juice. They're not frustrated about the juice. They're frustrated because their whole world isn't working. If we can find in that moment the ability to come, oh, this isn't the juice that you wanted. Oh, it's so frustrating when we can't get the things that we want. Move it into sadness, and boom, now we can help them to start crying. Now, if your child cries because you've helped to move them to the sadness, beautiful. Now you can just welcome the tears. But sometimes your kids are just going to start, maybe they're playing outside with their brothers and sisters and they come storming through the door. My stupid brother, I hate him. Why do I have to have him? Oh my goodness. First thing you say, my child is crying. Good. My child is crying. And now we have to stop the desire to say, why is he crying? Now, if he's saying his stupid brother, but it isn't his stupid brother. It isn't really what his brother did. Because if we ask them, now, what did he do? The child's going to try and tell you what your brother did that's making him cry. And it might seem trivial, but in reality, it's not about the brother. It's about all the things the child can't even talk about because there's so many things that are making them feel sad. And what Dr. McNamara says is when you understand that tears lie waiting to be expressed, it's easier to come alongside seemingly trivial incidents to help them get their tears out. And you need to believe that right now, your child, no matter what they're crying about, they just got to get those tears out. When the tears start, we need to sit quietly with compassion. Now, as you guys can tell, I'm a big talker. This is really hard for me. Some of you are better at silence, and that is what is needed at that moment. In your mind, you might be thinking, oh my goodness, what am I supposed to do? But if you just sit there quietly with your child, trust in that bounce back. They will cry and cry and cry, and then all of a sudden the tears will start coming up and they'll feel a bit better. And some of them might even be able to say, it's not really about my brother. I don't even know why I'm crying. And we just say, I know, honey. It's just a really sad, scary time right now. That's okay. Don't try and reassure too quickly. Resist your alpha instincts to make things better. We all want to make things better for our children. We don't want them to be sad, but sometimes they just need to feel that sadness. And that's, I had to train my husband to do that. It took me a while. Now he knows when I start crying, all he does is put his arms around me, and of course I like him to hug me. Maybe your child doesn't want to hug, but just sit there and just let the tears come and give lots of space to the sadness and the tears. Sometimes the problem needs solving, sometimes it isn't. It's really about feeling that sadness. Now, with older children, it's not always easy for them to let their tears out. Many of them feel very shy about their tears. It's so much better to do it in either shoulder to shoulder when you're watching, for example, watching a movie together in a darkened room. And by the way, if you put on a movie that you think is going to cause some tears to happen, turn the lights down. Turn the lights down. Don't look at your teenager, and you're going to hear sniffling, and you know there's tears happening. Don't say anything. Just be there. Just quietly be there. It's okay. Think thoughts. It's okay. Oh, I'm so glad he's crying. Don't look at him, because if you look at them, they're going to wipe their tears away. They're going to be embarrassed, but they need to cry. You need to be watching lots of sad movies right now, in a dark room. For some kids, sometimes it happens in a car, although we're not supposed to be driving around right now. Shoulder to shoulder. Sometimes it needs to be when you're going for a walk or where you're doing some work together, or you're doing the dishes together. Don't look at them. Let them feel their sadness. And of course, it doesn't have to be tears. It can just be deep sadness, and it's okay. It's perfectly normal to be sad right now. And yeah, whatever. And even if there's just a little bit of tears, be happy for those tears. Really, what our job is right now, our job is to be there, to take that caring alpha role, to reassure children that we and the adults in their life are taking care of them. We're thinking for them. We're making sure that things are going to go okay. Not quite sure how that'll work out, but we're going to make sure it'll go okay. We're going to figure it out, and give them lots of space for their sadness and for their tears.
Eva, I'd like to add though something. It used to be there in the past too. If we remember our ways of coping with our sadness. So we used to have sweat lodge where we sing and then share, and especially don't judge each other. So it was a safe place provided even for warriors or man or woman to allow those tears to go out. Sharing circle, talking stick. So there was tools that we used to use in the past. And also, I'd like to answer one question. I have a 17 years old that have high anxiety and anger problem, and we're working with her the most that we can. And she realized the other day she had like a big, huge meltdown, and she was like very upset, very angry. And she told me, okay, it's okay, mom, leave me alone. I need to cry. And then after I'll feel better. She realized that after, like it's her way to process, it's her way to understand that she cannot control all this emotion right now, and they just need to go out. So it was very, and I understand how it works. I was like, okay, good. She knows the drill.
Yeah, she knows the drill, and she knows that you are okay with that, right? that you're not going to judge it. She can't do it in front of you, and that's fine. We're often feel it makes, but she knows you're there and she knows you understand, and that means a lot to her. Yeah. So I think we have some questions.
Yes. Also, Eva, I would like you to go a little bit further more on, well, I want to say to people that it's just a quick overview that we did today, because we could have spent days on that. And I've been studying with Eva for since 2009, something like that. And it's subject that we've been talking about. And so it's just a quick overview. Hope you did appreciate it. But I have a question for you, Eva. Sometimes we hear that people think they can teach resilience. And is it something we can teach?
No, I mean, we can teach coping skills. So if you know, if like we can all learn things like how to get ourselves going. If I wake up in the morning and I'm not in a very good mood, I can say to myself, oh, be grateful for all the things that you have. And so I can cope, I can get myself through the day. So I can teach coping skills. But for, you know, and again, let's just give the example of a heartbreak. So we all know the first time you fall in love and someone breaks your heart, those of us that are older know there are many more fish in the sea. There's lots of people out there. You're going to find somebody. It's going to be okay. You'll get through this. But when you tell your teenager that, and they haven't yet had their tears about the person that they lost, they're going to say, no, I'm never going to find anybody. It's never going to happen. And then if we can help them find their tears about all the hurt and the frustration and whatever, you know, and again, I did that with my daughter. And when she finally came through her tears and she says, well, maybe he wasn't the best one for me. And okay, well, I guess I should, there's probably going to be other people out there, but you can't do that until you've gone down and come back up again. So, and the trouble with coping skills is they exhaust us. To be very careful, because if we try too hard to stay calm and to be happy all the time, we are going to become exhausted and depressed. So.
Thank you, Eva. And there is an important point I want to bring right now. It's before we go to some of the questions, but it's really important to mention that tears is also to feel the sadness, because I've been giving training on many subjects that we've been talking about. And when it comes to tears, I know that people are like, well, but do we have to cry? And then what happens? My husband, guys, and all those questions. But the importance here, it's like tears are really good, but feeling the sadness, it's good. It's does the work, you know? So yeah. It's
deep
really
sad. Let yourself feel that deep sadness inside of you. Yeah, that does its work as well.
And this is when you can bounce back after that. So this is really adaptation. And I had some teachers think like they were going to, they would go with the approach, you know, with the attachment. And they were saying like, yeah, but now they're all crying and they were, but this is a gift, you know, they have lots of tears, things to cry about. So welcome those tears. And after that, they will bounce back instead of having angry or frustration, you know, like they let their tears go. After that, they can go back to feel good. So, okay, so we go with the question. We do, Martin, do you want to start with the?
I have one here. How can we help the children when we can't even make sense of all that is happening?
Yeah, well, and that's the, of course, that's the, how should I put it? Of course, we can't, but again, as adults, we have more resources and our children are looking to us. So it's not false confidence that I'm talking about. And again, I don't want to be terribly political about this, but you know, we have an example south of the border of somebody that has false confidence. Our leaders did not have false confidence. They said, we're thinking about things, we're talking to people, we're going to find a way through. It will be different, but we can do it. And we as adults know that. Every one of us has lived through something where we didn't know how we were going to get out to the other side. You maybe had a marriage breakup or whatever. But you did, you figured it out, you got through. you could find somebody to help you. So that's the confidence that we have. The confidence isn't that we know the answer. The confidence is that we're able to find an answer. And that's all our children want to know from us is, can I count on you to find an answer? Because you know what, if they can't count on us, then they have to count on themselves. And that's really scary. So we have to be willing to act more confident than we are. But actually, I have confidence in all of you that you can find a way through.
The other question would be, what if my child is not bouncing back and remains in tears?
Well, for the most part, they can bounce back. But some children have so many things that they've never cried about that it can feel like hours and hours of crying. Um, Sometimes you do have to distract them and get them off of that and move them on to something else. But then know that those tears have to come back. It feels like forever when you're listening to somebody cry. But sometimes, and the hardest part is not to want to try and get it to stop, because what happens is, and it's really weird because it's like tears have these different layers and levels. And when you get down to that very deep bottom is when you can come back up again. If somebody is not comfortable around tears, we can inadvertently kind of like, okay, come on, stop crying now, stop crying now. And so the tears get stuck here and they can go on forever. You all know people whose husband died 20 years ago and they're still crying. But if you watch the quality of their crying, it's not deep crying. So again, I'm not saying if it's really uncomfortable and you can't handle it anymore, distract them, get them going. But the more you can, and I, with my own daughter, and I know all this stuff, right? I'm 70 years old. I'm supposed to know, and I had to sit back in my chair and deep breathly so that she never got the message from me that her crying was too much. And then that happened. But again, there's no simple answer to this, but try and just trust in your ability to be the place where the tears can flow and then move up.
We have one here, which is, how can we as adults support each other so that we can each assume the caring alpha role we need to take?
Well, that sounds like there might be a little bit of complexity there, but and again, I don't know if you're talking about in a couple or in a family. But I mean, sometimes you have to spell off. Some of you take the morning shift if you're more of a morning person, and then somebody takes the afternoon shift. I mean, sometimes that's what we have to do, because remember, as much it is exhausting for all of us right now to feel confident, to act confident when we don't feel confident. So if you have another adult in your life, that's wonderful that you can spell that off. Again, for some of the role that teachers do, and it is at least for an hour a day, you know, your child is being cared for by somebody else that can give them that sense of hope. But yeah, I mean, it's a challenging time because the whole ground is shifting, and so it's hard for us to stay confident. But hopefully, you can find someone that you can lean on.
There's this one is not a question, but it's a comment you might want to comment about. I encourage older kids to find solace in the power of sad songs, whether traditional or contemporary. There is a comfort in knowing someone else is going through the same thing.
Oh, that's absolutely beautiful, because again, music is very emotional. And when we listen to sad music, our brain goes through that emotional process as well. As you say, there's the comfort of knowing that somebody else is, but somebody else's sadness can help trigger my sadness. It gives me permission to be sad. It's hugely healing. And again, Sarah, you're an artist, so I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about your own experience with music and dance and sadness.
Well, just like you said, it's a safe place for my emotion to get out. And if people are more interested in the power of play in terms of releasing the emotion, the first webinar was about that. So maybe we can share the link. But right now, for me, it's really something that I just love to do, and I teach my kid to do. And it you don't have to put words on it. You just dance, and it do the tricks. And also I'd like to paint, and it's not the kind of paint painting where I control. It's like the kind of painting where I let all out and I'm free to observe after. Sometimes my husband look at my painting is like, "Are you okay, honey?" And I'm just like, "I'm way better now that it's all done." So I just love to express my emotion through art, but also watch movies. I lately I see my 14 years old. It comes to me more like you want to be an infant again. You want me to rub his back, so I allowed him to be like in this position. So we just watch like movie that we didn't watch for years, like, and then it's okay. It's okay to be in that time.
Yes, yes, it's a lovely time. And again, again, at 14 years old, it's kind of embarrassing to need mommy, right? I want to be a man now, but they need us. And that's why, again, we just give a space for that. You know, you put the movie on and you all try and sit on the couch, and if they snuggle towards you, and again, we have to be very, you know, just a little bit, it's okay, I'm here, it's all right, and just create those. And I see one of the comments here as well. And I'll just read it because it kind of fits in. It says, my sons are 25 and 30, and it's been difficult not having anyone in our home. Now they understand how critical isolation is. Technology is their answer. Netflix, gaming, and family card games. Shared meals is our new norm. So yes, exactly that. It's just people are, it's interesting because, you know, hopefully as we come through this, as we've had to adapt to a world that isn't going at the speed we're used to going, through our adaptation, maybe we will realize that slowing down is actually healthier for us, you know. And yes, frustrations can be let out with tears. Actually, that is the one of the best ways for getting out that frustration. And again, we will talk about that in our next webinar together.
What
And
sorry.
sorry. So, and sometimes it takes time to get that connection. I oftentimes say to people I give training to, you know, like you're expecting your children. You have your list at the beginning of the year and you're all excited, you know, like you've been thinking about those little ones, like for the whole summertime, preparing everything. But, and then they see you, but there's not you like there's not a connection, you know, like you need to give time to connect with them. And by having this alpha position, you know, like with everything Eva mentioned at the beginning. So it's the same thing with our children sometimes, you know, like we've been busy going to school and we're now in the same house, so we need to give time to connect.
Exactly. And I see there's one more there. What can be done with kids who don't use their words yet? They cry, but they can't say what's bothering them. And again, maybe it's just because I'm finally getting a little wiser as I get older. Less and less, it's not important what a child is crying about. More and more important is that they need to cry. If it's something specific, they will tell you. But a lot of the times they don't know, like it's that sea of sadness that they've never let out. It just hasn't been time for it. And so you just let them cry. And sometimes they'll say, oh, it's because my brother was being, you know, because, you know, I wish I had an older sister. And just, okay. But don't try and fix the problem, because it's not about fixing what they're crying about. It's about giving space for that sadness, all the things. And so actually, the less they tell you, the better, because you don't even have any desire then to fix it. You just know that the crying is actually doing the healing. And that's the biggest gift we can give, is to be the person who puts the arms around that child, either arms or just space, and says, I'm here for you and it's okay.
Here we have a few more comments. I think we have, do we really need those tears? I think we did answer that question. We model resilience as a parent or educator. Eva, do you have something to comment?
Oh, that okay from the Q&A? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just look here. Well, yeah, I mean, what we need to model in terms of resilience is we also need to model our sadness, that there are sometimes things we can't change and it's okay to be sad. Yes, we can show, again, some coping skills are okay, but really the resilience will come naturally as long as we give space for it to happen.
How can we help a child who is ADHD and autistic find their sadness and tears when they are having tantrums?
Well, again, autistic children especially have a very hard time with tears because autistic children live in a world that is so overwhelming to them that they put a huge shell on, and so it's really hard for them to find their tears. So we do the best we can. Again, you yearn for the tears. I remember talking to a mother of an autistic child, and I said, sometimes it'll be another year before your child can find their tears. But if you know that they need to find their tears, at least you're on the right path with them. And sometimes it can be frightening when an autistic child actually starts to cry. They get a little upset too because they don't even know what these tears are. So it's a yearning that we have. With children who have ADHD, it can be similar because they also have a bit of a shell on. But if we give them permission, it's amazing. So again, we're going to talk next week about how to move from frustration to tears. So hopefully if you have questions about that, I'll be able to answer them a little bit more. And I know for some of us, is it tears? But the research, there's a lot of scientific research saying we need to have that experience of sadness in our life as human beings. So hopefully you found this helpful, and I look forward to seeing you at our next couple of sessions.
Thank you, Eva.
Thank you.
Oh, it's wonderful. How many people did we have all together?
This is about 63 participants.
63.
Wow. Great. So we turn off the YouTube.
Turn the YouTube off. Yeah, see you next week.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Hey Valérie, je pense que ça aurait pu être bon de rappeler que c'est 1 heure, mais que c'est du matériel qui habituellement prend beaucoup plus de temps. Parce que là, tu sais, on a des questions qui vont partout, puis tu sais, c'est comme si on voudrait tout répondre, mais fait que je ne voudrais pas que les gens se sentent pas qu'ils n'ont pas été bien répondus, mais que ça prend du temps, puis qu'on ne les lâchera pas, là. We open a door and then... Hein, qu'est-ce que... pour la prochaine?
Je disais que on peut, tu sais, quand